listening.
The sounds and voices that are now a symbol of our lives becoming more high-tech.
The Internet of Things is this growing world where everything is a computer.
In 2019, technology helps us more than ever before.
Alexa, call Susie for me.
Social media keeps us up with friends and news. Online ads appear to know our shopping habits better than we do. But the people running for your vote are trying to sway you with the internet and data more than ever before. In 2020, big data could have a big impact on your vote, and there is so much focus on what's happening here in Silicon Valley.
Being online is no longer an optional thing.
How do these companies know so much about us? Should their power be checked? We're taking a deep dive into a topic that you should follow as the campaign trail continues to take shape. This is The Race. Welcome into The Race. I'm Chris Stewart. Each week we're traveling the country, taking a look at issues that could have a big impact on your vote in 2020. Now this week we're talking about big data, and that's why we're here in Silicon Valley. You take a look behind me here at this area that is home to some of the biggest companies in the world. You think of Facebook, Google, Apple, some companies that you may not even know of, but are companies that you give your information to online. There are so many concerns with big data, and we're going to be diving into that during the show, as well as taking a look at how the technology that's developed in this part of California has a real positive impact on our lives. But as we look ahead to 2020, let's talk about big data's big impact in our elections. The Center for Media and Democracy says candidates are running issue campaigns, getting all kinds of information to target a potential voter's fears, concerns, and subconscious thoughts about an issue. In 2016, a company called Cambridge Analytica helped build profiles of voters. It worked with the Trump campaign through the election. Now, our animator Nick Rafferzo explains how Cambridge Analytica's plan worked in 2016 and how that could impact plans for 2020.
Cambridge Analytica claimed to have up to 5,000 data points on more than 87 million Americans at the height of the 2016 presidential race. But how did they get all that data? Simple. Facebook and a powerful network of people. More than 270,000 people signed in with Facebook and took the quiz. It asked a wide variety of questions. The result was an ocean score. Dozens of free online quizzes asked similar questions and produced similar scores. But one thing made this quiz much different from the rest. Buried in the privacy policy was something that said you give the app permission to collect your data, and data from everyone on your friends list. So how did this all end up with the Trump campaign? Steve Bannon, the campaign's chief executive and Cambridge Analytica co-founder, introduced his company to the campaign. The controversy came to a head in 2018, and the company shut down. Now it's under criminal investigation in the US and in Europe for its role in the Brexit campaign. But the legacy lives on. Top Cambridge Analytica leaders now run a spin-off company called Data Propria, a marketing firm that says it uses science and emotion to tell a story. The AP reports it's working with the Trump 2020 re-election campaign.
Now, where we are right now here in Silicon Valley is near Facebook's headquarters. That's what a lot of these buildings are behind me right here. And when you think of Facebook and really just big data in general, it all begs the question, can we trust the system that's in place right now? Elizabeth Ruiz went to go see how people feel.
Voting in America.
I feel it's my responsibility as a United States citizen.
It's a right in our democracy, but the security of our voting machines is a concern.
I'm not exactly sure how the election fraud keeps happening because they can make a slot machine unhackable, but it seems like the polling machines are susceptible to all kinds of intrusions and manipulation.
I just don't feel like the people using the machines know what they're doing.
Cyber expert Kevin Ford says voting machine technology differs from state to state. However, he says the problem isn't necessarily with the machine, it's what happens with the data after you cast your vote.
The machines themselves may keep records of who voted for whom, but in a lot of cases those records will be exported from the machine and moved to databases in the cloud, on the internet, which opens up a whole a lot of other connectivity routes.
He says many machines are connected to state websites, some of which don't have the best security due to lack of funding.
We already have examples of Russia accessing those databases, pulling information from those databases, and trying to attack those databases.
While he does feel the U.S. is still vulnerable to another attack, others trust the technology.
I think people in charge of it are pretty thorough about making sure it's done right.
It should be safe and secure enough for voters to feel confident in who they choose to elect their officials.
Ford says there is no federal requirement to look into the security of the voting system. He believes that needs to change to make sure everyone's vote is being counted fairly.
I think we need more federal leadership here. We need laws in place to make sure that we're looking into the voting systems so that we're doing audits and risk assessments on those. We also need standards. We need policies. We need frameworks which tell the states how to secure voting systems.
For The Race, I'm Elizabeth Ruiz reporting.
How much information about you is online? What's that information being used for? Who exactly has that information? As we head into another election year and more of our lives being lived online, experts say those are things that you need to be aware of. What are some of the biggest issues right now when it comes to data protection?
One of the toughest things is that for most of us, being online is no longer an optional thing. It's a mandatory thing. There is a lot of data collection that happens without our express knowledge. Some people would argue you consent to it because usually the consent is buried in a long terms and conditions or privacy policy. And so yes, you consent, but most of us don't read those documents, nor could we be expected to practically.
How did we get to the point where these companies, whether it's Facebook or Google, where they have this almost free reign, it feels at times, on our information that's online?
Yeah, they do, because we don't have any laws, frankly, that restrict either data collection or data use.
Why should I care that my location's on, or that Siri's listening to me, or Alexa's listening to me, when I feel like I have nothing to hide?
I hear that a lot. I have nothing to hide, I'm not doing anything wrong. And so it kind of assumes that privacy is about hiding things. It's about I do something wrong that I don't want other people to see, when I would argue it's a lot more about just controlling, who you are and your ability to do things in the world.
Well, how do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
Senator, we run ads.
How does that show up on a 7-year-old's iPhone who's playing a kid's game?
Congressman, iPhone is made by a different company.
Is the government equipped with people right now to handle the issues of technology and data?
Certainly there's not enough. So there's a real need for technological expertise in Congress. That doesn't necessarily mean elected officials. I would not expect most elected officials to necessarily come out of software companies. I would actually argue we'd be better off if we didn't have our elected officials coming out of Silicon Valley, for example.
What should we expect from our elected officials when it comes to big data?
I would hope that what we would see are some reasonable protections for consumers in the next few years. There's only so much you can do as an individual, and that's why it's important, I would say, to pressure our elected representatives to say that you want, real data laws.
The federal government is rolling out new voter systems to protect us this election cycle. Thomas Hoppe went to Texas, where hackers launched a ransomware attack on nearly 24 local government agencies.
Imagine that your town had to stop functioning for a little while because of a certain cyber attack. Well, that happened right here in Keene, Texas.
People are friendly, kind. There's not a whole lot of crime.
Let's talk about Keene for a little bit. Keene is a small town 40 miles away from Fort Worth. It has about 6,200 people living right here in Keene. What is ransomware? It's basically some malware that hackers use in order to hold some files and documents hostage unless you pay a certain ransom. Well, according to the police chief, nothing's really been compromised, just things are a little bit more annoying now. Like their credit card system. Now people have to actually walk into the city building and try to pay for their utility bills because they can't do it online because of the ransom attack.
I tried to pay my bill. They told me that the computers were down and I could pay in cash, but I couldn't pay with my card.
I came here because Keene is one of the latest towns to speak out and say they've experienced a ransomware attack, but there's been about 170 since 2013 in any city or county here in the U.S., and 22 of them alone have actually happened in 2019.
As far as we know, we don't have any way to decrypt it currently. We're still working with, obviously, with IT people, with the cybersecurity people to figure out how to fix it, but there were some lessons learned as far as being more kind of a harder target going forward.
Reporting in Keene, Texas, I'm Thomas Hoppo.
Much more when the race continues next.